All right, here we go. To me, the college football season obviously does not start for quite some time, but when I see some of the preseason polls come out, and I know the magazines and websites, and heck, we could even have our own, but when I see one of the preseason polls, whether it's the coaches poll or the Associated Press poll, it kind of hits that it's just around the corner. I am amazed, though. I know how dominant that Nick Saban and Alabama have been. They have owned really the last 10-plus years of college football. I know how Clemson has been. But unless I read this wrong, guys, Paul Catalina to my left, Craig Smoak to my right, Sikkim 365 Radio. Thanks to those of you texting 254-339-1122. That's the number to call. We'll take calls in this first hour, and the text or messages on YouTube 365 Sports. Alabama, did I see this correctly? They got 63 of 65 first-place votes?
Well, why shouldn't they?
Man, I know, and I know they reload, but, I mean, it's not like Clemson hasn't been good lately. Oklahoma got the other two. Not Ohio State or that just seems to me, I would vote for them. I would.
I mean, that's the thing is, who else are you voting for? I mean, you voting for Oklahoma when they seem to trip up at the end of the season more often than not. I think Oklahoma is going to be really good. I think they'll be, potentially a playoff team. Obviously that's not some controversial remark. I think most people expect that, and you can see how that's reflected. They're number 3 overall, which I'm sure you'll get to the rest of the teams, but I mean, you can look at other teams and find warts, and for Alabama, it's like, oh, well, they're replacing this guy and they're replacing this guy. And that might be a concern, except for the fact that they've done that for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, if you were replacing simply a starting quarterback on most teams, that would be enough to probably bump you out of the top 5 or maybe just have you a shade lower. They're not only replacing their quarterback in Mac Jones, they're also replacing Najee Harris. They're also replacing countless other bodies who left for the NFL draft. Devontae Smith, obviously. So they're losing their best running back, best quarterback, best wide receiver, and that still has nobody even blinking an eye.
And their other best wide receiver who was hurt last year. By the way, if you look at this, new quarterback for Alabama, new quarterback for Clemson, same quarterback for Oklahoma, new quarterback at Ohio State, I believe a new quarterback at Georgia, a new quarterback at Texas A&M, a new quarterback at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's a transfer from Wisconsin for Notre Dame, correct?
Yeah.
And then Purdy back for Iowa State. So Oklahoma is at 3, A&M at 6 as far as the Big 12. A&M, of course, I know SEC. Let's see here. Texas at 19. Oklahoma State 22nd, but Iowa State does get some love at number 8 inside the top 10.
Yeah, they do.
And I think they've earned it.
Yeah, they have. And, that's not a surprise either that they're top 10 to start off. I mean, we'll see how they actually handle those expectations, because expectations aren't something that Iowa State has, grown so accustomed to that it's just old habit at this point. It's still relatively new. Just the thinking that they are, in Big 12 contention the last couple of years, that's been building up, and then now here they are. Everybody comes back. Unfortunately for them, pretty much everybody came back at Oklahoma as well, and you can see why why people would side with the Sooners just based on history. But I mean, I'm sure Matt Campbell's going to have better teams the longer he stays at Iowa State. But this really does feel as though it's okay, get it done, or I'm going to not lose faith, but get it done, or I think that's a knock. I mean, and I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but if they don't go out and if they don't at least play in the Big 12 title game, to me, that's a massive disappointment.
Well, you don't want to get a case of the Oregons. And I say that with all due respect to Oregon, but, outside of playing in one national championship game, Oregon was always just right there knocking on the door. Mm-hmm. And so, and even in the loss of the national championship game. So you want to be that team that breaks through. For a long time, it was Clemson. People were just ragging on Clemson. And then Dabo Swinney has clearly, shredded that to bits. And so Matt Campbell hopes he can do that. But, yeah, you do start to doubt, is this the ceiling for what they're doing? What are they doing wrong not to get over the hump?
And I don't think they've done anything wrong to this point, because it's still relatively early. But, this is the best setup that Iowa State has probably ever been, not knowing their entire history. But I would think this has to be one of the most ready and anticipated teams they've ever had with all the guys that are coming back and with Campbell back. So, yeah, I think at least an appearance in the Big 12 title game should be the expectation. And, Oregon did knock for a little while, but then eventually Oregon was in that conference title game on a regular basis. Eventually they were in that first playoff game. Shoot, they were in the national title game. I mean, Iowa State, they need to finish, at the top of the Big 12 to take that next step, and it seems like they're primed to do that this year. But I know Oklahoma's going to be tough, and I know that there will be some other curveballs along the way, I'm sure.
We'll get to calls. Here are some of the chat room. First of all, thanks to those of you. In fact, Todd Lee, Peanut Butter Hero, Scott Bankel, Scotty B, Todd Lee, Bazoo. I'm glad they're sleeping on Auburn. Gopher fan, Minnesota Gopher fan here. Love the show, guys. Doing great on keeping everyone up to date. And then here's Todd Lee. Alabama's an easy pick for number one. It's a mini NFL factory, of course, in Tuscaloosa. Are we really that shocked? I'm not shocked they're one. That 63 of 65 votes to me, maybe that's just me, that, usually a preseason poll can be at least there's a scattered here or one or whatever.
Look, Clemson's quarterback has played a whole lot more than Alabama's has. We haven't seen Bryce Young. I think he threw 9 passes, 11 passes, something like that. And forgive me, chat room, if I'm off by a few, but he's not done that much. DJ Ugalele, he's played quite a bit. I mean, he played in that epic Notre Dame game last year. Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID for a few weeks, so their quarterback played. That's why it kind of surprises me just a little bit that Clemson did at least slice into more of those.
By the way, some of the text responses, even some of you who I saw last night texting, and even now the 334, I'm getting more and more SEC fans who are starting to tell us that after the dust has settled, that you don't like the setup, you don't like the expansion, that you're a little bit unsure of it. And it's not, I don't think anyone has said because they're worried about the teams coming in. It's just you kind of like that little comfort zone you had. And so we're starting to get more and more of that. I'm noticing that. And you can tell us why. You can let us know why if you are against the expansion with both Texas and Oklahoma, whenever that might be.
That's a little surprising to me, because it's only beneficial, really. Although, I would be hesitant. Just telling the SEC folks out there, don't trust Texas as far as you can throw them. I'll tell you that right now, because if they can get an in somewhere, they will, and they will use whatever power or leverage. Now, that's what's going to be so fascinating is as much as the wins and losses will be for OU and Texas is how they try to throw around their power, if they try to throw around their power, and how that works. I'm very interested in seeing that. We saw A&M attempt to do that, and that got shot down really quick. But the other two aren't used to that necessarily being the case very often. So I am fascinated to see if they just blend in like normal, or if they do, have an A&M moment or two early on and they kind of have to get checked a little bit. And what does that look like? But for the SEC fans that are saying that, I would be highly interested in why you believe that, or why you are now possibly leaning towards not being in favor of this expansion of Oklahoma and Texas. I think as long as it stays there, it's fine. But I think I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong as well, but I would think a lot of people are just more concerned about what the fallout from that move ends up being and how it might wreak havoc across the entire country, as we've heard for the last 2 weeks.
If it gets bigger, like on steroids. Nick Barnett, Texas isn't a big deal here in Birmingham, Alabama. Nick, thanks for your John Kelly. Hey, what's up? A lot of you. Let's go to the calls. 254-339-1122.
I think it'll be interesting to also see how many people are fans of a conference and a league and a region, as are fans like the three of us of just college football in general. Well, yeah, we have our favorite teams, but we like college football.
Right.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I have my favorite team, as frustrating as they have been the last decade or so, but I still loved college football. And maybe I'll learn, no matter what we have in the year 2, 3, or 4, to like it even more.
Steve in Beaverton, Oregon.